Hello, I'm Christina Smith from Tunnelling Journal, and today I'm in conversation with Lok Home, who's the CEO and president of tunnel boring machine manufacturer Robbins. Lok started his career with Robbins over 50 years ago, and he has insider knowledge on many of the world's toughest tunnelling projects. Today, Lok is going to share with us 3 changes that he would like to see in the industry. We're going to talk about contracts and why Elon Musk might have it right, about why R&D projects aren't the right approach to innovation, and Lok's going to tell us why we need to talk about disasters. So let's get going. My first question, Lok, let's talk about contracts. Why aren't they working in your opinion?
Well, there's several things wrong with the contracting structure in our industry today. One, and the biggest problem, is the time it takes from conception of the project till the time we really start to bore. That is probably 2/3 of the time to complete a project. In most cases, except in rare cases, and unfortunately I can name a few of those rare cases when I get to disasters, but in most cases the tunneling goes fairly well today. The machines are made well, contractors in most cases operate them adequately, I would say, and the tunnel's done fairly efficiently. So that's really not the problem. We have other problems. A lot of them, we still have over budget problems. We still have delay problems. And I think that's associated mainly with the way we go about the process. As we know, the city sort of gets convinced, or the municipality or the land authority or whatever it is, convinced that they need a tunnel. And then the owner, whether it's a city or a private company, goes out and tries to, or hires a consultant to get it specified. Consultants come to the TBM manufacturer and say, hey, what is the best machine to do this project? Especially so if it's difficult, because it's difficult for the consultants to stay up with all the latest technology all over the world. So they come to the manufacturers, whether it's us or our competitors, and say, what is the right type of machine to do this project? We provide such information, sort of at no cost. This is how the industry works. And then the consultants finish specifying the project, get geological reports, which are today normally fairly good. But that whole process takes time. And what's wrong with the process, the contractors, there's usually 3 or 4, or maybe as many as 7 or 8 contractors bidding that. And the low bidder always says, how did I get it wrong? And so in such a situation, they're inclined or apt to look for mistakes by the owner, mistakes by whoever had input into the design. And then they try to gain some money back through the claim process. And that process is wrong from 2 standpoints. It affects the budget. It affects the cooperation between the parties. They don't cooperate well, and they take longer to come to a resolution on what the problem is and proceed. And it results in an industry that isn't working for the best interest of progress. So if we could have a no claims process, and one that somehow shortcuts that whole process, then I think our tunneling industry would progress faster and would have a better process for completing tunnels and lowering the cost of tunneling.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. And I know Elon Musk comes up for quite a lot of criticism from some parts of the tunneling industry. But I know that you're interested in his approach, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what you like about it, or what we could learn from his way of thinking about things.
Yeah, his general approach, he of course criticizes, which sort of rubs us in the industry a little wrong, calls us a bunch of snails, but I'm okay with that. And but his approach to, as he did in Las Vegas, to come into the city of Las Vegas and said, I'll put this tunnel in here from A to B, or A to B and potentially to C at this much cost, and you pay me through revenue from the project. You just help me with the right of way. I'll take care of the consulting, the geological matters, and you just help me with the permitting and the access to where we want to go. And that's a good approach. It's in line with what I was discussing earlier. If you can take out several of the steps and put the onus right on one party, and that party can be made up of several parties and would have no claims on each other, because you all benefit from it if you do a good job. That's generally seems to be his approach. And I think that's a good approach to contracting. I think it's the one way forward for our industry. So he did it in Las Vegas. I don't believe, and I don't think he truly believes, that his little Tesla cars running around underground are going to be the immediate future. But the general approach to how to get tunneling done faster and quicker, I agree with.
So you're really sort of saying that in the tunneling sector, we should be thinking not so much focusing on our tunnels and the civil engineering, but offering, outcomes and a vision to cities and areas, and clubbing together with like-minded companies to sort of provide the whole package.
Yes, that's it. I think there is other companies sort of trying to move in that direction as well. And I think that'll help our industry. I think the industry is ready for it. We're talking about it in our sort of our groups, UCA's talking about it. And so I think the industry is ready, and I think we'll see some moves in that direction, or fairly big moves in the next while.
Fantastic. Okay. So let's move on to talk a little bit about innovation. And I thought perhaps first you could talk to us about some of the things that Robbins has introduced and has been working on over the recent years.
Yeah, I would say the biggest innovation that we've done, historically we were hard rock, as everybody knows. Then we went into EPB in a fairly big way. Probably a lot of companies don't know this, but we've had 50 or 60 EPB machines operating in Singapore and various cities around the world, a lot in China, in the US. And it's sort of unknown. We're still known for hard rock. But what helped us a lot in EPB, we didn't do very well. I can assure you we didn't make much money in the standard soft ground EPB business. There's probably no mistake. But what we did learn is a lot about that technology, like hard rock technology, deserves a lot more respect than you give it initially. And we learned a lot about the problems associated, and that gave us the ability to enter this crossover market, to make machines that can go through rock and soil and have a reasonably good success in both. And I think we've proven that up on not a lot of projects. We've had good success on, I would say, spectacular success nearly on some crossover projects where we've done really well in the rock portion, or we've really done fairly well in the soil portion and good in the rock. But giving the contractors a tool to get through just about any condition. And we've been helped a lot by the contractors, because the contractors have helped us with such things as how to more efficiently grout, or what segment design, and also probe drilling, grouting in advance and probe drilling. That technology, we sort of adapted from the contractors themselves. And so I guess the trade-off is the contractors give us knowledge for the next project, and we're obliged to give them good machines that don't break down. So that process worked well. So I think the big innovation is crossovers are here to stay, will be used, and are becoming more dependable. And the next more challenging innovation that we took on recently was to make rectangular tunnels for the mines with mechanical boring and hard rock. And we've got a project like that going on in Mexico. And that was tougher than I thought. We're doing it. It's a beautiful looking tunnel. It's compared to walking down a drift that's been drilled and blasted to walk down a drift or drive down a drift that is mechanically bored. It's day and night in terms of the practicality of it. You can predict where to put up your vent lines. You can predict where you can put in your rock bolts and screening. So the fact that you can get a mechanically excavated profile is a big advantage for the mines. And so it's worth our effort to continue down and develop that technology.
It's a real achievement, isn't it, to be able to create these rectangular cross sections in hard rock. That's something that people haven't been able to do before, and something that will be really useful as well in civil engineering. But can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've come up against and that you've got through over there in Mexico?
Yeah, it boils down to the cutting principle, and I'm not going to give away too many trade secrets. But we're not the only one working on it. Certainly, Epirock's working on it fairly big time. Komatsu's working on it, and we've worked on it as a company historically. We've had mobile miners, which anybody that knows about history of Robbins and history of non-mechanical excavation of mines knows about that. So it's not our first try at this as a company, historical company. But I have to say, I think we got the first success in a year and a half. We bored 1,700 meters of a 5 meter by 4.5 meter tunnel, not without our problems. I mean, there were some things that worked okay, some things that didn't work okay. But fortunately, the mine is work with us. The mine also sees the need for this, and they are helping us through. And we're continuing to make improvements, continue to take out the sort of the parts of the whole system that don't work as well, and replace them with long-term functional systems. And but it's been more difficult than I thought it would be, as is any innovation. I guess I'm a little too optimistic when I start down these innovation roads, but certainly it's a learning curve, and it's been, I think, good for our company, good for the industry.
Thank you. Could we take a step back to talk about the crossover machines? Because I was reading about your high-speed job in Turkey and all the records that you've been setting there. And I just wondered if you could talk to us briefly about what that job entails and why those people are doing so well over there.
Well, yeah. If you've given a few speeches before, I'm a great believer in over-design, and the contractors are great believers in not paying for it. So I like to have a little more horsepower, a little more torque, a few more probe drill holes, and a few more seals when we design than probably is necessary. And so if you over capacity the machine in torque, horsepower, drilling capabilities, startup torque, then that gives the contractors the tools when things are going well to go very well. You just don't sort of go a little bit better, you go very well. And so it is sort of a basic philosophy we have at Robbins to over-design. And so my view is, I'm not very good at convincing the contractors or even the owners that that's a good decision. So if you're going to pay $45 million for a 13-meter machine, why wouldn't you pay $5 million more to have some safety features? It's like insurance. But that last $5 million is a hard sell. And in this case, we were able to sell it because we gained trust through other projects with the Turkish contractor. And I must say that Turkish people, the Turkish contractors, like some other countries in the world, they have good work ethics. They work hard, they get in there, they don't question hey, is this the right way to do it, or we can do it a better way. They follow the instructions and just work hard. So I think the combination was, first of all, we had better ground than we expected. That's the first thing, to set records. The second thing is to have good equipment, of course. And the third thing is to have the confidence of the contractor in the machine and what they're doing. That sets records.
So now I wanted to ask you about innovation. And I was thinking, as you were talking about Mexico, you very honestly said that things weren't plain sailing and perhaps not as easy as you might have thought. And some people would say, well, why are you jumping in at the deep end? Why are you trying to use that technology on a project, maybe before it's sort of 100%? Why aren't you, still sort of in the R&D phase? So I just wanted to ask you about that, R&D projects versus learning by doing, really.
Yeah, well, that comes from my first job out of mining school. I joined the R&D department of a mining company, and I think that fixed me in R&D for life. I'm sort of joking here a little bit, but what is true about R&D, especially in mines, is that there isn't a full commitment by everybody to make it work. It's sort of put off to one side and say, whatever works, that'll be great. And if that attitude persists, if it works, that'll be great, the development doesn't go so well. I think a better approach to it is, let's convince everybody this thing can work. Let's all admit that, hey, it may have some problems. And then we're all committed to it. The mine's committed to it. We're committed to it. The financiers of the mine are committed to it. As long as we go into it wide-eyed and know what we're doing, then I think development, especially in our industry, goes much better. It is difficult to carve out R&D in our industry and make progress with it. You sort of have to jump in with both feet, and you and the contractor and the designers, and commit yourself to making it work. Okay, it might be a little slower than expected, and you want to start out, but it's good for the industry, and certainly we're not expecting the contractors to pay for our R&D. I kind of look at it as an industry development, not only a Robbins development, but an industry development. And I agree in sharing technology. I'm not a big hoarder of technology. Get something going, somebody's going to sort of steal it or use it anyway, and move on to other things. It's just a business philosophy in life.
So our last sort of change that we're going to talk about is really the need to talk about failure. Often these things aren't talked about. It's a big no-no. We're all told that everything's going swimmingly. There've been no problems on this project. And I know that you're very much not of that frame of mind. You spoke to the British Tunnelling Society recently at a very popular lecture where you talked us through 3 sort of disaster projects and explained the lessons learned. And people can go and see that if they search the ICE's YouTube website. So why is it important that we talk about failure as well as success?
Well, of course, we all know it's basic. Your failures somehow get deeply ingrained in your mind. Your successes are okay, and so you learn from your failures. So, and also if you announce, not advertise, I don't know if that's the right word, but at least acknowledge and publish your failures, it saves other people from not entering the same failure mode. And so it's good for the industry. And eventually, I think it's good for you as a company to acknowledge your failures is human. I mean, we do it as humans, some of us less or more. And So I think it's really good for the industry, and I encourage it.
And also, in a way, it's giving clients a false expectations, isn't it? Just because there are hiccups and problems along the way doesn't mean that you can't get through them together and still deliver a successful project. One little thing going wrong isn't the end of the world. So I think it's sort of instilling, false expectations as well, in a way.
Yeah, if we look back in history, one of the great success stories of how to solve your problems is the Channel Tunnel. If anybody studied the history on the Channel Tunnel, the first months were terrible, the first years were terrible, but when everybody sort of got their act together, it set world records without doubt, and which substantiates what you just said, Christina, that hey, there can be problems, but if you all work together, you can certainly sort through them and get your project back on schedule.
I like that example because as I talk to you, I'm actually sitting in Folkestone, which is near the mouth of the Channel Tunnel on the UK side, and we have actually a lot of old miners still in the town. So yeah, I definitely like that example.
Yeah. And the story is exactly true, isn't it? That it was really difficult in the beginning, but then sort of took off like a racehorse. And a great tribute to all those old tunnelers. A lot of them came from the coal mines. And
yeah.
Okay. I got a couple working for me that worked on the Channel Tunnel still. So yeah, nice story.
So my final question, all these things that you would like to see change in the industry, but where do you think the biggest force for change is going to come from?
Better communication. I like the BTS forum. That's why I speak there. I'll speak there again next month because it communicates well. And I think the more we communicate with each other, the more we can improve our game, let's say our total tunneling game. So I think it'll come from places like BTS, ITA, which needs a little shaping up in my view, to help us a little more. I think it can do better than it's doing. That's clearly my view, and I don't mind openly saying that. And we're trying to do better in UCA in the US. So those organizations can help our industry move forward and get together, and it won't come, in my view, from one particular segment of the groups you mentioned, because I think we all got to pull together and rely on each other to bring innovation together forward.
Well, on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much, Lok. I've enjoyed our conversation, and I hope everybody watching has too. And thank you.
Well, always my pleasure, Christina. You're a big part of this industry. Your publications are a big part of this industry, and I thank you for what you do for this industry as well.